All right. Welcome everyone to the first Sheila session of the year. This session is titled Drive Like a Girl with Lanita hosting. A lot of this material that you will get is going to be leadership focused. This is going to be kind of like a part two to the first session that some of you all might have participated in for the November program. So I'm super excited to have each and every one of you here with us this evening. One thing that I want to point out is a couple things that we need to talk through, which are housekeeping items. But before we do that, I want to send a special thank you out to our sponsors, Motorola Solutions Foundation, Lockheed Martin, Cisco Technologies, and General Motors. Without them, of course, you know that our sessions would not be able to happen virtually or year round. And thanks to each and every one of them, we were able to do both of those things. So special thank you goes out to them. I want to go over some things that you guys will learn after this session. So by the end of the session, you all will be able to define and identify emotions and its distinction from feelings, identify how their emotions impact those they love and lead, identify what triggers the development of emotion, better identify and manage emotional reactions that show up in pursuit of organizational success. So these are some of the things that you will be able to walk away from. So keep that in mind. If you guys have not taken a look at your, Google Classroom, or you have not been invited yet, please let me know by the end of the session. I'll make sure you all are invited, but you guys will receive a note-taking handout in the classroom. So go ahead and make sure that you look at that. I'll drop that handout into the chat in just a little bit when I hand it off to our wonderful speaker. But just keep that in mind that you guys can set your goals. You can take notes on everything that Lanita is discussing to take with you and kind of track where you're going from beginning to end as you continue on learning from each session that you participate in. So please make sure that you utilize that tool. And I would say without further ado, let's go ahead and jump into this content and the session. I know it's going to be amazing. The first session with Lanita was amazing. So I just want to give a special welcome to her and let her take it from here. Miss Lanita hosting, go ahead and take it on from this point on. I'm going to give you the floor and the mic.
Thank you, Marquita, for the awesome welcome introduction. And I see you guys are all over the U.S. I'm excited to be back. We had an awesome time last time when I spent time with you all. It was short-lived, and so I'm hoping to renege and to make up for lost time from our last session. So hi, Caitlin. Hi, Alexandria. Kat, Lydia, Mary. Hello, everybody. Good evening. Okay, so let's jump on in. Drive Like a Girl. This is one of my favorite programs. And sometimes, I'm not always privileged to just speak to women, but when I am, we get to have these intricate and complex conversations behind closed doors and to really disclose some of our interworking. So I just want to make a disclaimer now. I'm going to ask you or prompt you, probably trigger some emotions that you may have, but it's within good cause. So beat me up later, okay? I'm expecting a virtual hug at the end of tonight. All right, let's go ahead and jump on in. So this is my mom. My mom is the first woman I saw drive like a girl. I watched my mom get up for work every day, 4 a.m., 6 a.m., 10 p.m., 2 a.m. to drive the Metro bus down the Washington, D.C. streets. And I saw her move throughout her career from bus operator to bus supervisor, to train operator, to train supervisor, to division leader, to superintendent, regional director. I watched her progress in her career my entire middle school through high school. And what people did not see was the passive assaults that my mom encountered, like customers spitting. They did not see every time she missed every holiday, Thanksgiving and Christmas. We used to go to her station to bring her Christmas dinner and to open the gifts together. And on Thanksgiving, she would cook really early or really late, and we would bring her plate to work. People didn't see that. They also didn't see what it felt like for my mom to endure the infidelity that my dad disclosed in their marriage. People only see the outside of our successes. People saw her parking lot sticker. They saw her drive a luxury car. They saw her put her daughters through college in cash. But what they did not see was all of the sacrifices behind closed doors that sometimes we often aren't privileged to see unless we really know a person. And so Drive Like a Girl is really inspired by watching my mom, not just progressing her career professionally from the very, very, very beginning, but personally, and watching her ability to we're going to call elastically or resume her original form even after being stretched beyond what she felt was capacity. And we're going to click on over to the next slide. So it's my phrase of championing women who need that extra push. And champion basically means to advocate for, to plead, to promote, to support. And on the next slide, you'll see we break down champion, but we also break down what it means to be resilient. On the next slide, resiliency is our capacity to quickly recover from difficulties. It's the buoyancy that we're often described in science when something is pulled and then it takes back its original form. That's resiliency in essence. And so Drive Like a Girl is it's a call for women to like champion us to be, even when we're pulled by force or stretched, that we can resume our natural state and form through our resiliency. So on the next slide, I want you to take a look at some of the things we are responsible for. And I'm gonna call them out to you. Some of the things we're responsible for ourselves, we're responsible for our own well-being. And I think all of us took ownership of that in 2020. We're responsible for our actions. We're responsible for our thoughts and emotions. What am I missing here? What else are we responsible for? Caitlin, Kat, Siri, what else are we responsible for outside of what I listed here? And this isn't a trick question, by the way. What else are we responsible for? By choice or by force. Some things we choose to be or assume responsibility, and some things we just don't have no choices. It's an obligation for us to do that. What are some things outside of ourselves, our actions, our thoughts and emotions, and our well-being that we're responsible for? You guys quiet tonight. Some people say, depending on the structure of your family, you may be responsible for helping with an aging loved one. You may be responsible for helping with a younger sibling. You may be responsible for your academics. Some of you may have other household responsibilities. But the point that I'm trying to make is that these things that you see here will only grow as we age. What we are responsible for does not decrease. They increase as we age. And so we have a great responsibility of learning how to manage all of those things. And part of that, we do that is by acknowledging and managing our emotions. And that's essentially what we're going to talk about today. So here's some common emotions that we encounter. Anger, and that comes in the form of resentment.
Sorry about that, y'all.
That's okay.
I'm trying to, y'all bear with me. I'm trying to get us back on track. Okay, sorry, go ahead, Renita.
And before we jump into these, I want to acknowledge and define what emotions are, because sometimes we're unaware of them. But emotions are our adaptive response to the deductive reasoning that we're having, to our decision making. And I don't know if you know this, but emotions have the highest bioregulation, meaning how your body is responding to the emotion that you have. And that is one of the ways I can distinguish the two. When you feel yourself having sweaty palms, an excessive heart rate, butterflies, that's a signal of an emotion. when you've heard the phrase when people say, I was so angry, steam was coming out of my ears, that's a signal of an emotion. You're having an emotional reaction. Some people hyperventilate, they call it panic attacks. And so how emotions first show up is in our body, which is so powerful. And if you heard people say, be careful, take on too much stress, you'll be sick. That's why. So the root of it starts as an emotion, and it can spread and really take control of our body. And so your emotions precede your feelings. So before you have the feeling, you have the emotion. So how some people say, I don't know how I feel. I just need to process it. Like I need to get my thoughts together. There's not clarity about the feeling, but you're having an emotional reaction. And so your emotions will precede your feelings. So emotions are sparked by the brain, and they send a message to our body. Your emotions are sparked by the brain and sends a message to the body. That's why it's having the highest bioregulation. Feelings are sparked by the brain, and it sends a message to our mind. And that's why it takes time for you to understand the feeling that you have, or to articulate exactly what it is. And so that's the distinction between the two. But here's some common emotions that we all encounter. We all encounter anger, whether you want to admit it or not. But anger shows up in the form of resentment. Like you almost like, you may resent an older sibling because maybe they had more privilege than you. You may resent the high achieving student in your class because they always have the answers or some magical way. You may resent the teacher who gave you a 98% and you earned an A. You have a resentment towards them. It's a form of anger. Sometimes anger shows up as a form of irritation. So if you have younger siblings, if you're dating, you can be irritated by a spouse as well. If you're married, those who are adults, older adults on the line. Anger shows up as frustration too. Like when you feel like maybe like you're being challenged, you feel like you've reached a brick wall emotionally. You're almost like, this is really getting under my skin. And then the excessive form of anger is what we call rage. And that is when we have an outwardly display of the anger. So some of these things will happen silently. You could be sitting in resentment and irritation and frustration silently, but rage is outwardly displayed. So it's the highest form of anger. So if you get into this point, that means you weren't acknowledging the signs that your body was telling you when the emotion first occurred. That's part of the way we manage it, but I'm moving it along too fast. So anxiety is another common form of an emotion, and it shows up by way of fear. We will all encounter this. Fear of going to the next level, fear of applying for that college, fear of going for the doctoral fellowship, fear of asking the guy or the girl out, fear of, cooking your first meal for Thanksgiving, fear of moving into your own place, fear of signing the student loan payments. Like you will never escape the feeling of fear. And that's the lowest level of anxiety. I experience it. I believe Beyonce experienced it, where every time, right before she performs, I do believe that there is a fear, and she has said that it goes away, but it exists. Guilt, sometimes we feel like a form of maybe I could have done this better, or I wish I would have done this. I wish I would have been there, brings on a form of anxiety as well. And you have stress, confusion, and nervousness. All of these things are common feelings again. And the purpose of today is not to dehumanize you, because I want you to have the expression of emotion. And I want you to understand the root of where they're coming from so that you can better manage them. And then the last one is depression. And I know you were probably shocked to see this there, because we have this somewhat of our understanding of depression is not something that we shine a light on proudly. But symptoms of mild depression are actually very common. And one of the common causes of that is sleep deprivation. Being tired or overworked, burnt out. Those things are, they are the starting points to having mild symptoms of depression. If you have lack of activity for an excessive amount of time, you may find yourself bored. Boredom can contribute to that. So there's a lack of stimulation. So you feel withdrawn. That happens to me. And if you are a busybody, I'm a busybody. So when I'm not doing something, I feel so aloof. I feel like, please come save me. I need something to do. Give me something, a book. I need to do something. I need to volunteer at the church somewhere. Somebody come pick me up. Like, too much idle time sends me in a state of boredom, and it doesn't make me feel good. And I don't know if we acknowledge that in those words and associate them with a mild form of depression, if it's kind of like done for a long period of time. Loneliness, whether you have you are away or isolated for a long period of time, and I think all of us can relate to this as it pertains to being quarantined. Then if you've lost anyone, grief is a form, can happen in a form of depression. And then you have there the entiredness, but I would also label it as fatigue. So these are the most common examples of an emotion that will first trigger before a feeling occurs. And when I did some research, because every time I come in to teach or to share or to do virtual programming, this is all research based. So I'm learning and studying these things, but giving them a practical casual conversations about them so that we can be better leaders and, quite frankly, better women. Okay. So I just want to hear from you really quickly in the chat box. Which of you, and maybe I was going to say raise your hand. How many of you have encountered at least one of these emotions? And if you've encountered them all, you can type in all. And I'll be the first to say I have encountered them all. Caitlin says all. Lydia says all. Kat, yep. Cassandra, all. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So here's the thing. You know, the outward display of our emotions show up as sadness, where our family and friends can see it on us. It shows up in our tears. Like I mentioned to you, the pulsating heart, the sweaty palms. Sometimes it's weight gain. And those are the outward displays of your body showing you that you are having an emotional reaction to something that's consuming you. But this is why on the next slide, this is why I feel like these topics are so important, because when we are not knowledgeable about these things, this is how it shows up in our lives. Our emotions begin to drive us. They're in the driver's seat of our lives. So they have control. They show up in our conversations, how we love people. They show up in how we treat people that we work with. Our emotions are leading us. And so the only way when we drive like a girl is not my way of saying we're wearing our emotions on the steering wheel. I'm actually saying the exact opposite, that we have the superpower to not let the emotion be the driver, like this baby that you see here holding on to the steering wheel. And so we take that power back. And that's essentially what most of our time today will be about, taking that power back so that our emotions are not showing up and driving on our behalf. I don't know about you, but I don't want anybody but Lanita to show up on my behalf. I don't want any other character traits that are not indicative of who I'd like to be and who people know me as to show up on my behalf. I don't want to be like that. And so we do that by learning these things about ourselves and then managing them. Okay. So, you know the saying, hurt people, hurt people. And I think we can all mean well. But when your emotions have the steering wheel, essentially, these are some of the things that happen. You lash out, like you are outwardly, maybe verbally. It could sometimes be physically, depending on the state of anger that you're in. We mistreat others. If you find yourself often having to go back and apologize for something that you said out of frustration, irritation, remember those are forms of anger. They are not as severe as rage, but they're still a form of anger. Maybe you're underestimating your own abilities. I call it self-sabotaging thoughts. I can't do that. There's no way I get that leadership role. I'm not going to apply because I would never win. Those things are showing up in the form of fear. and you are having the fear showing up by way of your thoughts. And it kind of paralyzes us to move and take action when we know we're very capable. Sometimes emotions will have you out of sync, like you just feel like I'm all over the place. I don't know what's wrong with me. You can't put to words what's happening, like either how you're feeling. Maybe sometimes I use this phrase, today I just woke up on the wrong side of the bed. I woke up physically on the right side of the bed, but mentally I was not on the right side. I don't know what side I was on. Like sometimes those things you feel out of sync, not your normal self. And then I often feel like we are comparing our circumstances when we're operating from a place of emotion. Like, I wish I could do that. Or she has all of those things. Or he will always get the perfect girl. Or she always got the best internship. I'll never get those things. And so comparing the state of where we are, being hypercritical to where we currently are, those are signs that you are operating from a place of emotion. All of these are. Now, let me know, how many of us have been guilty of doing something like this? I'll raise my hand to all of them. And particularly before I understood how emotions worked, I was very good at lashing out. And really with my student leadership roles, Alexandria said currently. Yeah, with my student leadership roles, Kat said all. Yeah, Siri says all I have. And these are, and we'll talk about this in a second, but some things are happening prior to the buildup of these things occurring. So the more cognizant we are about the buildup, the more empowered we are to be it to the outward display where we're actually causing other people hurt and harm. Yeah. So we are not able to take the driving wheel and drive like a girl if we're not able to take direction and lead from a place that's not in of emotions. So I want to pause here and I want to hear from you actually. Do we have the capability to unmute Marquita? Actually, no. I want you all to talk. I want to put you in breakout sessions and I want you to share about a time that you might have displayed one of these emotions. You lashed out, you mistreated someone, you had to go back and apologize, you underestimated your own abilities, you didn't show up in your fullness. So we're going to put you into breakout rooms. And if two of you can share, I'll give you 7 minutes. We'll come back at, oh man, I'm not good at math, 7:33. And then we'll hear from whomever feels comfortable sharing. We'll hear from two. So we'll put you into breakout rooms. I want you to share a time where you feel you outwardly display your emotion because you weren't able to manage it at that time. And I'm going to play some music as we transition. Oh, you guys are already out.
All right. It looks like you guys are coming back to the main room. Awesome. Awesome. As you all come back, just know that you all have permission to go ahead and unmute your mics. Lanita is going to be asking you all questions, so feel free to unmute, turn on your camera if you Colgate ready, smile, and let her know you are in the room so that she can get some feedback directly from you, okay? And Phil, you could use the chat as well as you've been doing, but feel free to unmute and speak freely if she asks you questions.
Awesome. Thank you, Marquita. Okay, we're back. So I asked you a very vulnerable question and then I sent you off to go and chat about that vulnerable thing. So now I want to see if you're vulnerable enough to share audibly. Anybody? Feel free to unmute yourself if you want to share. What's been a time where you might have displayed these characteristics to a loved one, a family member, a team member?
One of mine is being out of sync because when it comes to like school, especially now, you have like these times, but they're all Zoom. So if you wake up late, then messes up everything. Then you have to cram in all the work that you missed. If you miss anything, and it's just hard because some teachers don't let you know if you have a Zoom until like 5 minutes before. So just like being out of sync certain days is just it's hard and like it frustrates me. So
Mm-hmm. Do you know what might be contributing to you feeling out of sync?
um I guess it would be like maybe the like how late I do my work, because we do have like a lot of projects, especially at my school. It's just maybe like 5 projects a week in almost every class. So it's just like a lot of work to handle. So I think like maybe staying up late and trying to get that done is contributing to that.
Yeah, so good. Suffer is not the best word. I am challenged with that as well. When my sleep schedule is off, I am not the same human being. I don't function the same in the morning. I don't wake up with the same enthusiasm. I don't want to talk as early. So I can imagine having to be out of sync because I stayed up late and then show up for class. Oh no. I'm not going to be the same human. So you're right. Like your night routine is just as important as your morning. In fact, it sets the tone. What you do before you fall asleep sets the tone for how you will wake up. And one of the things that I often teach about in other content that I do is that, how you fall asleep is literally how you will wake up. So let me give you an example of that. If you fall asleep with a lot of things on your mind, all of the responsibilities, things you have to do, maybe a little overwhelmed, maybe you're feeling like consumed, and you don't have the recommended length of sleep, you will wake up feeling like that. If you fall asleep sad, maybe you were thinking about something, you watched a sad movie. Heck, you watched a scary movie. I don't know if you're going to wake up scared. I haven't experienced that. But how you fall asleep, you fell asleep talking to grandma and she told you how proud she was and she can't wait to see you graduate. And then, I don't know, your dog licked you to sleep till you fell asleep and, you're just feeling good, and you had the proper amount of rest, you will wake up feeling good. And so how you would like to start your day the next day is how you should end it. So I typically, and I am still practicing this. So by no means am I saying this like, hey, I've got it all mastered. But I've learned to, if I want to be productive the next day, I have to put a stop on my work period. And that does mean sometimes I don't finish everything. I put a stop, I light a candle, I turn off the lights. When I take my shower, I use a candle. Like if I've been working really hard, very consumed, so that it's the lack of light is contributing to my body settling down so I can prepare for rest. And so I use the candle. I'm in the bathroom. Yes, I'm in the dark with the candle. And then sometimes I'll listen to like an audiobook to fall asleep to. And that has really helped me. Aromatherapy is another one. So my girlfriend bought me this spray. It's called Laundry Day. I'll spray my little bed sheet. This could be anything. And it could be in my mind, but hey, listen, it's working for me. We have to learn what works for us. And so I love that you shared that and you highlighted how what you're doing before bed doesn't impact you throughout the day. That's good. And I'm glad you were able to identify that. Awesome. I'll take one more. Give me one more.
Okay. So mine was underestimating my abilities, mainly because I've been going for like interviews and stuff for college, and I get really nervous before. Just be like, I prepare like questions and try to like do voice exercises or whatever, but then I get really nervous before then, and then like I answer questions, but then I know that if I was not as nervous, I would do better. So I usually think that I'm not going to reach that level, or I'm not going to be the person or possess qualities that they were looking for. So that I think that's what usually makes me like really nervous, and I end up like not doing as well as I should.
Mm-hmm. And it is not uncommon for individuals to show up for an interview nervous. When people are not nervous, it's almost like, oh, so you feel like, you're feeling very confident about this, huh? We almost expect others to feel somewhat uneasy of being, quite frankly, grilled and being examined in front of sometimes multiple persons. So it's a natural feeling. What I would empower you to do is just say that, acknowledge what it is. So you'll say, when you're in the interview process, say, hey, I just want to get this. I just want you all to know I am exceptionally nervous right now. My palms are sweaty. Like, say it, call it out, because that's the only way you can defeat something, is if you acknowledge it. And I've been on so many interview panels. Like, I'm almost sick of seeing people interview, but it is not uncommon. It is common for them to have a level of, unsettlement, I guess I'll call it that, but you can speak to it. And it's not for them, it's for you. It's for you saying, you know what, okay, but I'm gonna take a few deep breaths. I'm very prepared and I'm excited about this. If I come off a little nervous, like, make a joke out of it. I remember one guy, he was so nervous, his underarms were like, the whole side of his shirt was soaked. And he said, I don't know if I've ever been this wet when I'm supposed to be dry. And we all laughed. And, laughter does help to combat the fear that we're feeling. And so my little tidbit to you would be to say it. I'm a little nervous right now. I'm shaking in my boots, but I'm ready. I'm excited about this opportunity. And try and let that subside after you've acknowledged it. So listen, now that I've kind of helped you see what emotions are and how they show up, let's talk about where they stem from. Because they can just come out of nowhere, out of Mars and Jupiter. Like, they're rooted in our identities and how we were, our childhood, how we were raised. And I call that your Carfax. When you are buying a used car, you are given the Carfax about the details about the car, the last owner, how well they maintained it, what features are available, things that you should be aware of that you probably wish didn't happen. They're letting you know ahead of time. It's almost like, hey, this is what you're getting into. And so I feel like we are so empowered when we know our own Carfax. No one can tell you about yourself if you already know who you are. No one can put labels onto you and say and make you feel ways that don't exist when you know. Like, I know that sometimes I'm not the most kind person. Now, I feel like I'm kind. I'm just giving an example. I know that I struggle with public speaking. So I know you don't have to. So I won't be bothered if you told me that I bombed my senior presentation. I know that. That's my Carfax. But I want to take you a little deeper than that. There are some things that show up in our lives that we have normalized how we react to it. And I'll give you one. I have had a really tough time growing up, the relationship between my dad and I. It was not abusive. I wasn't sexually assaulted, but there was a lack of connection. Now, I grew up with both of my parents, but both of them worked really hard. I didn't see them a lot of the time, almost 80% of the time, actually. But I had a provider. I didn't have someone to talk to ask about things. No one asked, like, who is this guy that you're bringing or taking to the dance? And what time you coming back home? It was nothing like that. There were some things that didn't happen. Sometimes people say these things happen to me, so I'm this way. But sometimes there are things that did not happen that also cause you to be whom you are. And this is how I knew this was a Carfax of mine. One of the things that I've seen in both my parents' marriage is how they communicate to each other due to several reasons. Those are communication styles that I started to adapt. And it started to show up in my leadership roles. So I would say things really lashing out, expressing my feelings with a lack of sensitivity to other people's feelings. These are things that I observed as a child. And I took them. So they transferred into outside of the home where I was raised and took them into the organizations that I was leading on my college campus and to some degree inside my first place of employment. That is my Carfax based off of what I experienced in my childhood, what I adapted as normal, it travels with me. And when we see people who we find are somewhat extremely difficult, maybe they're very distant, we see people who are very overly giving, we see people who are very just naturally like withdrawn, very sheepish and shy, like almost very fearful about things. There were things that contributed that made them who they are. And so my question to you, and I'm gonna put you in your breakout rooms for you to talk through this, is what is one car fact that you know that is true about yourself? And how you identify this is I want you to think about some common behavioral traits and responses that you often have in moments of conflict, in moments of fear and uncertainty. Those are sometimes our very first, not symptoms, but starting points. What's a car fact of yours? What have you experienced in childhood that may show up in times of conflict, fear, uncertainty? I want to put you on your breakout rooms. I'll give you about 7 minutes. We'll come back at 7:55. Getting good at this. 7:55. All right.
Eastern, 7:55.
Oh, yes. Eastern. Yes, Eastern time. We'll be back at the 55. How about that?
All right. I got you all in your rooms. And for those of you all that are unassigned, I'm getting ready to put you in your rooms now. Alrighty, let me pause the recording.
I want to share this. There's some other car facts that I didn't acknowledge, and I'm saying this because I'm hoping that it frees you all to share freely. But I also recognize that I'm exceptionally short-tempered. I'm spoiled. I'm sometimes very judgmental. I am easily let down. I have an emotional guard wall, and I lose interest in things that do not challenge me, hence why I am single. So I'm just airing out all my little dirty car facts. And so that's me. And I own those things while I am working towards being better. I recognize that those are the things that I know, or attributes that I know that I have. Okay, so your turn. Nothing is TMI.
She dropped a truth bomb, but you don't have to do the truth bomb.
You don't have to do the truth bomb. Give me one car fact that you feel comfortable sharing that you might have. Siri, and please, if I am not pronouncing your name right, let me know. Lydia, I see you said in the comments in the chat, I know I'm very, very emotionally sensitive, and I've always been that way since I was young. Yeah, me too. I could cry so easily. If you pull me to the side and say, hey, I realized that you might have missed a period and a comma in your last paragraph, my tear ducts start to feel like I'm so easy. And, I'm glad that you're able to recognize that, Lydia, because what happens is when people know where you are weak, they tend to use it to their advantage. And so if they know that you're sensitive, those things become easy targets for other people. When I'm talking in workplaces, employments, family members. And I always tell students, no one can push a button that does not exist. So if you know you are emotionally sensitive, nothing wrong with that. Don't change that, because I am too. That's what makes us human. But okay, going into this, tear ducts, you will not win. This is not your day. You will stay up there. At least let me turn around, go in the bathroom. Like, you have to find ways to actually control those things. Caitlin says, I get frustrated really easily with myself and others, and I physically show that emotion by crying. I've always done that. Yeah, that frustration piece that turns into tears. Woo! And Caitlin, do you have a buildup in your chest when you're frustrated? Before it comes out physically, inwardly, your body's responding. So describe what's happening in your body when you feel like that before the cry. Do you have tension in your shoulders?
Yeah, I get like very tense because like usually my frustration comes from when people don't listen to me, or they don't like acknowledge what I'm saying, or they do something that I told them you shouldn't do that.
Yeah.
And they just don't listen. So it's just like very frustrating. And like school again, very frustrating with these projects and Zoom and all that. Just it's just so frustrating. And then I get tensed, and I usually try to control that by listening to music or doing something to calm myself down. Sometimes it doesn't always work that way, and I just have to like let it out.
Mm-hmm. And I'm so glad that you answered the question I was about to ask you. How do you cope when you're feeling like that? And you mentioned music. I'm hoping that it's calming music, that gets you kind of like settled. And I would challenge you to think about what are some other ways. Can you take a walk? My therapist, and I'm a big advocate of therapy, she would say, you have to take a few deep breaths. And at first I'm like, that doesn't work, lady. I need something like that's going to take me from 10 to 0. And a deep breath is not going to do that. However, when I stopped talking about it and I started practicing it, it did help. So it helped me to kind of like, she actually challenges me to take deep breaths and count down from 10. So she'll say count down. And we actually tried it. And then she says count down from 10 and hold your temples. Now, listen, I know this is a little advanced, but I'm just telling you some practical ways in which when I find myself physically reacting to the emotion that I'm having before it gets outwardly, it's our responsibility to manage those things. So those are some of the things I've also dealt with as well. Like I said, I had to deal with a lot of mean classmates in the past, but I got past them. Yeah. Yep. And it only takes a person to see you cry one time. One time. I am not saying don't cry in front of others, because there will be some times where you just can't compose yourself. But there will be some times where we should compose ourselves and find a way to communicate the frustration that we're having. Good stuff. Kat says, yes, therapy is super good. Oh my gosh. And my next challenge to you guys, and I won't have you share this, but where do you think the root of those feelings or reactions to things, where do you think it stems from? Is it learned behavior? Is it your way of adapting to maybe behaviors you've experienced from those that you love? I would just challenge you. We don't have to talk about that tonight, but learning where they come from. I can trace back my short-temperedness. I can get that from my mom. She's impatient, everything like this. My judgmentalness that I have, and now it's not outward, I don't say it, but I think it. I've learned that from my mom. So at the root of them, and when I say, I acknowledge them as my Carfax, that is just me saying, I'm aware that these characteristics exist, but I am actively looking to be better in those areas. And that's the only challenge that I have for you. Okay. So as you're learning who you are and how you got that way, and we're digging deep, we can only control the things that we are aware of. And I want to give you some practical ways in which we can manage our emotions so they do not have the steering wheel on our behalf and they're not acting on our behalf. And no one is pushing a button that exists because of, our own makeup and our own beings. So the first one is knowing your triggers. And words can be triggers, places can be triggers, people can be triggers. Someone mentioned classmates that are unpleasant. Activities can be triggers as well. Processes can be triggering. So a trigger is just something that has an effect on you, like instantly. When someone says this, does this, behaves this way, and someone mentioned this earlier. I think it was Caitlin. You said when you feel like someone is not listening to you, that is one of your triggers. You probably feel that way when you have to repeat yourself because they weren't listening. So that's a trigger. And the trigger will show up in your emotions before your feelings. And remember, emotions precede feelings. So if you're like, I don't really know what my triggers are, think about how you react like outwardly to the things that are happening inwardly. Now that we're having this conversation, you're going to be very cognizant about like what's happening in your body. So you'll know your triggers if you did not know them tonight. A trigger of mine, oh my goodness. One of my triggers is a person not being timely. Oh my goodness. If you tell me this, we are going to, I'll see you at 4 p.m. Come with your notebook, your pencil, paper, and I show up and 4:10 has passed and you're not there. Oh, I am triggered. I'm so triggered. And, I had to unlearn that. But in that moment when I'm sitting and waiting, doctor's offices, oh boy. Whew, dentist, I have to tell myself, Lanita, sometimes things run over, but that's a trigger for me. So, and I'm so proud of myself because what would normally happen in those moments where I feel like someone is not honoring my time, typically a trigger is related to a core value that you have. I respect people's time. I value person's time. I like to show up early. That's a core value of mine. When something is not in alignment with a core value, I am triggered. I value excellence. When someone is behaving mediocrity or mediocrely, I don't even know if that's a word. Or if I'm a part of something and I feel like it displays lack of planning, I feel like my time is being wasted, I'm triggered because it's opposing to a core value of mine. And so if you have not yet identified your triggers, just think about the things that are important to you. Caitlin, I think one of your core values is being heard. Like, hear me, give me a chance to explain or understand what I'm saying. And so you may find in relationships, platonic or romantic, that if the person does not listen, it's triggering. It makes you upset, flustered. So it's good that you know this now, because when you will be in those relationships and organizations, someone's going to trigger you, right? They will, because we're imperfect. They're going to pull all the triggers, bang, 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 bang. And then you are left to manage it. Like, you're left to say, okay, I know I'm being triggered right now because I told Caitlin what the instructions were. She came to this meeting. She didn't read the notes. Okay, deep breath. Okay, so today I'm going to go over the notes that were emailed to you 2 days ago, but that's all right. Like, you take ownership of that, you're being irritated and frustrated, everything that happens before rage. So that's good. The second thing is, like, ask yourself, why does it bother me? Why does it bother me that Kevin never gets his side part straight? It bothers me that it's crooked. There's a few hairs out of place. Like, when you can understand the root of why something bothers you, you can also have better control over it. And I'll give you an example of this. I do not like, when my sister and I were sharing a bathroom growing up, we're 10 years apart. I don't like hair in the bathroom. I don't like hair in the sink, in the tub. And so I had to ask myself, why does it bother me when she's in the bathroom combing her hair? Like, to her, I'm grooming myself and getting ready for the day, but I'm triggered. Like, why does that bother me? But the root is because she's going to leave the hair there when she leaves. And it's not cleanly to me. So asking yourself why. And then the last thing that we do when we take ownership and being able to manage our emotions is establishing boundaries. And this is the hard one. When we establish boundaries, we basically are we are taking what some people find control over us. We're taking back that control. And to the person who's the recipient of that, it doesn't feel good. And so an example of establishing boundaries might be, Mary, I know that sometimes you get flustered because the homework assignments and the projects are difficult. But in today's session, I would just ask that if you find yourself frustrated, if you could just hop off for a few seconds so that no one else on our group call it feels your energy exchange. Are you comfortable with that? Just hop off and just hop back on when you can. You're establishing a boundary that this place where we come to learn is the place where we would like to keep away the energy that depletes our own energies. That's a boundary. Give me an example. I want to hear from you guys. Give me an example of establishing a boundary, as I'm trying to think of another good example, because that one wasn't as good. Mary, give me an example of establishing a boundary, or maybe one you've had to establish. If you don't mind me putting you on the spot.
I the only Mary on the call?
I think so.
One of my triggers is impatience. I just get really impatient when someone's explaining something to me that I either think won't work, and I know it won't work, and yet, the social graces and or the political thing to do at work is to let them say all the way out to the end when at the end it's never going to work. So why am I wasting my time? So that's sort of the impatience thing. I don't know why I'm impatient. Probably because I'm one of 7 children and I was the middle child. And so, getting some words in, edgewise, getting my point across kind of thing, I had to sort of, fight for it, get in there, make it happen. And so like, I want to get in. The boundaries, I had a really good boss who, after one of the meetings in which I told his boss, like, that'll never work, didn't even let him finish. Afterwards, my boss sat me down and said, well, when your boss's boss is giving you an idea, you got to listen to it. You got to, so the boundary was, okay, I'm going to sit here and listen to it. And I'm going to find the good points. Well, you know what? You're right that this and this could work. However, in order for that idea to work, we're going to have to we're going to have to deal with this, and this problem, and help them see why it won't work, as opposed to me just, cutting them off saying this will never work.
And that's a really good example, Mary, of a boundary that you put on you. I love it. This is what I'm going to do when I show up in these environments, so that I am not triggered or causing the other person to feel any. I love that. Such a great example. And I also have that impatience too, particularly when we're on calls and you're troubleshooting something and the person's like, yeah, just do this, hold star. And I'm like, I did that already. Next, what you got now? So yeah, totally get that. Anyone else? A boundary or a trigger that maybe you have come to realization that you may have?
So this is kind of funny in just the fact that it's like directly opposite yours, but one of my triggers is kind of like when people like try and make me adhere to strict time schedules and stuff like that, because I have ADHD, so I have a really, really hard time estimating how long things take and adhering to schedules. So then because I can get easily distracted, or just, it's really just hard for me to like actually stick to that. So every time people like mention time to me, or they're like, oh, how long is this gonna take you? Are you gonna be on time? Are you gonna be late? And I'm like, I don't know. And it makes it so hard and stressful for me. And it makes me feel really bad and guilty too, because I'm like, I don't want to be this way, but it's just kind of like how I am. So
this is such a good, powerful example. And I'll tell you why, Kate. If we were together, a part of a leadership organization, and let's say I'm the leader and I'm time sensitive, and Kat, I think I pronounced it incorrectly the first time. You come in, you're not late. You're coming in when you can, right? Because time is not like a strict thing, like you mentioned. And so I might be triggered because I feel like, oh, Kat is not being respectful of time. So this is what typically happens. And this is not something that I would do at this age, but when I was in college, I would. So I'm just giving you an example because this may happen. And you may have to talk through this with your leader. I may feel like, well, Kat doesn't value the time of us starting on time. Kat doesn't respect that, we established a set time. And that's in my mind. The thing about conflict is that there are 2 persons, 2 minds, and typically 6 conversations that are happening in the mind, 3 on each side. We don't have enough time to talk through that. But what I do want to say is, Kat, on your mind, you're saying, listen, I don't know why they're starting on time. It's just a few minutes. Like, what in the world? I wish they weren't so stringent. Like, this isn't the military. And when you are leading people, we have to be sensitive that your point of view or your opinion and what triggers you may not be for the people that we lead. And so that's another reason why it's important for us to understand why something bothers us, because before we associate it and assume that others feel the same way we do, there will be people who feel the complete opposite. And so being sensitive to that. So there's a connection between why it's important for you to know why things bother you. Because you could pull, if I were leading Kat, or if Kat was leading me, to the side and say, hey, you know, I really value time, but I see that sometimes you aren't able to make it on time. Is everything okay? And Kat may come out and say, you know what? I'm okay with that, but I get a little anxious about this thing. Like, could we perhaps like give a grace period? Is there a medium? Can we give a 5-minute grace period and I can show up in that time? But I feel a little anxious when I'm wrapping up something, trying to get here. So that's why talking through these things are good. But you all will find as you progress personally and professionally, what triggers you may not trigger someone else. What sets your soul on fire might just be water to someone else. But that's why it's important for you to know why it bothers you. Because we can't go to the person and say, don't you know? Don't you realize? Because they may be distinctly different. They don't realize. Good stuff. I love that. I love it. I know we're coming close on time. And I want to end by saying this. Now that I've gotten you guys conscious about what emotions are, how they impact us and those that we love and those that we lead. We also talked about how they show up in our lives and then how we can manage them, like how we take ownership of what's happening, recognizing the signs of the body, what's changing, understanding that emotions precede feelings, all those things. I want to leave you with this. I love cars, by the way. This is my dream car. This is a Tesla, just in case you didn't know. One of the things, I live in Maryland. There are often quite a few accidents in my area. And but I've noticed that in very few of the accidents is a luxury car. Very few. Why do you think that is? There are very few accidents with luxury cars. Why do you think?
Maybe because people are more like cautious around luxury cars because they don't want to have to pay for that. And also maybe people with luxury cars are like, this is expensive, so I gotta take good care of it. So you gotta be a safer driver, I guess.
If I had to guess, Kat, I'd say luxury cars drive differently. People who drive them drive differently. They drive more cautiously. They're more attentive. They're more vigilant. You know, there's more at stake. And I feel when we have mastered or have taken ownership of managing our emotions, we should be driving like a luxury car. The luxury is you. People have the luxury of having access to you, relationship with you, romantically or platonically, meaning a friendship. We give them the luxury of that. How we drive that thing, it should be luxury-like. And so I don't know if you know this, but a BMW takes about 12 to 18 weeks to mass produce. A Ferrari takes 3 weeks. And it only takes 13 hours to build a Toyota. 13, they just got it. Boop, it's finished. The most luxury out of all of those cars, the BMW and the Ferrari, they take more time. They're handcrafted and assembled with precious care. And when we take ownership of kind of knowing ourselves and how we show up to those that we love and lead, we're simply putting a luxury price on how we drive. And drive is a metaphor for how we are going about life, behaving in our leadership roles and in our personal lives. And so my charge to you is, I need you driving like you're in a luxury car. From here on out, now that I've shared these things with you, like driving intently, you see potholes are your triggers. You see debris in the road, those are your triggers. You see speed bumps, pedestrians, I would pray that you would slow down for pedestrians. Those are people who are pressing your buttons. Like, don't run them over. Like, drive, like, you know, this thing costs a little bit extra money that I just want to be a good steward over. And so I'm going to end by saying that drive like you're in a luxury car. And that's how we drive like a girl.
Awesome. As always, awesome. So we are going to first talk about some of that. I know we unpacked a very heavy topic tonight, but I would be remiss if I didn't kind of sit in it for a minute and really just commend you all for sharing your stories and your personal not only just your triggers, but the things you're doing to cope with some of the things that affect the way you handle your emotions and leadership roles. Um, the thing that I can think about is how incredible it is for you all to tap into it. You got to be self aware to kind of tap into those things. So the fact that you guys are so self aware, so young to know when you're hitting a max, I heard, being heard is something that's super important. And when you're not being heard, you're frustrated, knowing that school might be overwhelming and frustrating you, and being aware of that frustration and how to manage that. That's not easy to do. Like, I'm older than you guys, and I'm still learning how to manage all of those things. So the fact that you guys are learning these mechanisms so young is really, really incredible, and it's going to make you an even better leader. For the sake of time, I'm not going to go into too much detail here. I'm just going to allow you the room to ask whatever questions that you guys want to ask. It can be coping mechanisms that she recommends for you on your personal journey, or something else, or just some sort of feedback you might want to have. So I'm going to leave this room, give you guys about 5 minutes, whether in the chat or you want to ask them live. Go ahead and shoot. I'm going to give you that room now.
Yep, ask away. I'm open book, and no question is off topic or off the, whatever goes after that sentence.
Okay. No sharing. We don't have any sharing going on.
Lydia asks, what coping mechanisms do you have for dealing with times where you lose track of your emotions? Ooh, okay, so I just started this one in quarantine, and it was going outside and taking a walk. And I started it because there were some frustration periods that I was having at work, and I was feeling like overwhelmed, but I still had to do the work. So you know how you're overwhelmed in the moment, but you still have to finish the project, or you still have to write the paper, but you're overwhelmed. For me, I can't work like that. So I had to find a way. You all may find yourself doing this. Sometimes people just typically shut down, say, I can't do it. But what I did, I started taking a walk, 15, 20 minutes. I walk around the neighborhood, and I come back, drink some tea, eat some chocolates, and I open back up my laptop, say a prayer, and I get back to work. But having a moment of disconnect from whatever is triggering me.
Unplug.
Yeah.
I think that's key. You must unplug. I think we all have a tendency to be wired all day, especially now. Like, we have to think about the fact that we're dealing with a pandemic. We're in the house, on computers, on technology, literally all day, if we weren't already doing that enough. And we gotta take a moment to just say, let me step away and unplug. And it's okay to take that 30 minutes, hour, half day, whatever, until you come back to it, to be able to really be refreshed and ready to get the project done. You must take care of yourself. You must be kind to yourself. That is super important.
I love that. Be kind, for sure. Alicia, someone once told me that every response I have is an emotional response. I know this is a trigger for me. Do you have any suggestions for how to respond to a comment or handle that? Oh, this is someone pushing the button. See, remember I tell you, people only push a button. They push a button because they know it exists. So we just got to disarm them from the ability to push that button. But what I would say, two things. It is nothing wrong with you having an emotional reaction, particularly if it's someone that you love, that you feel safe with. You should be okay to share those things. Now, sometimes people minimize our feelings by labeling them as something. So they're basically saying, hey, stop. Like, I'm not okay with how you're reacting right now or how you're feeling. And that can be infuriating, because it makes you feel like, okay, well, you don't care, or I am not, like, whatever's happening to me, you're not as concerned as I am. So that's the first part. So sometimes it's a person attempting to minimize how you feel, sometimes because they don't want to have a feeling about what it is that you feel like. leave, you have that. But the other piece is sometimes maybe perhaps we are reacting in a way, having an emotional reaction. But what I would say to you, the response would be not to respond to that. Like actually process, like, am I having an emotional reaction? What is the cause of it? Because when you get the cause, you can communicate that without the emotion. So yes, there are some times you may be having an emotional reaction, and don't allow a person to minimize your feelings by telling you, hey, that's not welcome here. But then there are moments when people bring that to our attention. Don't respond. Thank you for bringing that to my attention. Let me process this, and then come back and share why you are feeling the way you are. Having rage, frustration, and irritation is not an explanation. That is the description of your emotion. The explanation is, I'm a little frustrated because you have to be able to communicate that. That's the only way you eliminate someone labeling you as emotional. Like, hey, I'm actually frustrated because I feel like sometimes, I don't know if this is a male that you're responding to, but sometimes, some people operate in logic and then some of us operate in emotion. I'm an emotional person, so everything emotional for me. But I have to process what is the logic behind my response. Yeah. It was nice meeting you, Caitlin. No problem. Lydia, do you have any tips for motivating yourself to get back on a project if it wears you out particularly badly and forces you to take a break, especially if you don't really want to work on it again? Tell them I don't want to do this no more. Like saying no, that's establishing a boundary. I had to get really good at this, Lydia, because I'm really good at a lot of things and other people see that. So Lydia, if you're very good, you will commonly find people want you to be a part of what they're doing. And you don't always want to do that, but you do want to help them. The boundary that I would advise for you is to learn to say no. Hey, I would love to support you in that way, but, and whatever, how you ever feeling that piece. Hey, I may not have the capacity to do that. I would love to help you. Is there another way I can help you that don't take as much time? Because if you continue to do the things that you enjoy, it will, the product of it will show, it will look like or feel like, or you'll produce it as if you don't enjoy it. So that's a boundary that we now have to get you to establish in 2021, saying no and being confident in that. What if it's a oh, you didn't say that. If it was a requirement now. Well, required things are non-negotiable. Okay.
Well, yeah. Well, they're non-negotiable, or you go to the person who's requiring it of you, and maybe you just tell them about your capacity. If you are realistically having to advocate for yourself in that situation, advocate. It's okay for you to advocate and say, hey, listen, I know this is a requirement of us, or this part of the project, and this is what we need to do, but this is what's on my plate right now. Is there anything else that I can do to either make this up, or could you assign this to someone else without putting too much work on another person? There are ways for you to advocate in that moment, even if it is a requirement. Obviously you can't just completely dismiss it and not do it, but advocate for yourself. It's okay to say, I'm at my max. Like, can I get some help with this? If I have to do this, can I share in this with someone else? So we can get it done.
Love that. I love that, Marquita. I know that we have hit time, and quite a few people have had to jump off. And we are 1 minute away from 8:30. I did want to say you're welcome, Lydia. Thank you to you guys for contributing to today's conversation and for participating and being conscious. And remember your Carfax, own them, acknowledge your triggers, get them boundaries in place for 2021. So you can drive like a luxury car.
Awesome. That's amazing words of wisdom and that you all can take. And please stay on the line because we have a couple more things for you guys to do. I know some have to jump off. Thank you, Lanita. I think the 2 takeaways is calling a thing a thing. I think that a lot of us don't feel comfortable in our emotions, because often we're told not to really utilize them as a power, but it is some power in calling a thing and saying, this is how I'm feeling in this moment, which is important. And I think the other takeaway is driving your luxury car, because you're the luxury car. Mine is a Aston Martin Vanquish. So I see myself as that every time, and I try to operate as such. So amazing. I want to take this time to thank you guys for attending the session. Please take this time, about a couple of minutes, to go ahead and use the QR code on the screen. Click into that. And I am going to very quickly try to drop this into the chat. So sorry if it's going to look a little funky on your end, but I'm going to go ahead and copy this link and go back to our session. And sorry, I'm having a little trouble pulling this back up. Here we go. Percent. Okay, so we're going to, oops. Uh-oh. Y'all get to see things and cheat a little on what I got coming up. But go ahead and use the QR code. Take a couple minutes to fill that out. If anybody has any feedback or any responses you want to drop in the chat, show her some love for the session or what you took away. And I'm going to figure out how to, there we go. It's giving me a little difficulty there. Paste. Oh, and I just sent that to one person. There we go. All right. So if you have not gotten a chance to fill it out using the QR code, I've dropped it in the chat. So I'm going to talk through a few things so I won't keep you here. I know we're over about a couple minutes. So I'm going to talk through this as you all complete your survey. So a special thank you to our sponsors once again for making sure that we're able to do sessions like this virtually in your home and connect with one another. Motorola Solutions Foundation, Lockheed Martin, Cisco Technologies, and General Motors. Without you all, we would not be able to do what we do, and we thank you so much for that. A special thank you to Lanita Hostin for doing a part 2 to our leadership session. Please show her some love in the chat again. We thank you for all of your jewels you drop in our lap. We need them. They're absolutely important to us continuing our journey. I learned something, and I'm sure a lot of the other students have also learned things as well. Thank you to our student programs volunteers who have stayed on the line tonight to help us in the chat, Mary and Lori. Thank you guys so much for coming out this evening and dedicating your time to us. And I hope that you all took away some things as well. Just a quick recap of what we have coming up here soon for Sheila. Tuesday, March 15th, we'll have Careers in Public Safety with the Motorola Foundation panel. Tuesday, April 13th, we'll have our conflict transformation session. That'll be about navigating disagreements to create deeper connections. And that'll be with Lori Ramsey, who's on the line tonight. Tuesday, May 11th, we'll have Checking Your Bias, How to Promote an Inclusive Community with SWE Board of Directors. So there'll be a panel of about 4 that will be participating in that session. And then, of course, we'll have SWE Next Connect on Tuesday, June 15th. So please make sure that you all register for all these sessions. We will be sending out more information here soon for you all to register. So don't worry, you should have already received the first email, but we'll continue to keep you all aware of what's going on so you all can sign up as the sessions happen. And again, I want to thank you all for coming out this evening. I will make sure that anybody who has not gotten an invitation to the Google Classroom, the Sheila Google Classroom, will get an invitation this evening, as well as a handout. So if you had any notes that you wanted to jot down, you can throw them in that hand-taking notes document that we created, or you can get it from the classroom because it is up already. We'll also make sure that the PowerPoint presentation, as well as any additional materials, will be made available in the classroom as well under the leadership folder within the classwork tab. Again, thank you all for coming out. I really appreciate each and every one of you all, and I hope to see you all very soon for our next session.
Good night. Thank you, Lanita.
You're welcome. Good night, everybody.
Night.